Hi guys, it's me, CHD, and welcome to another episode of the podcast where today we are reviewing the farcical Monaco Grand Prix that happened yesterday, and I am absolutely in the right to call it farcical because it was a complete horror show, and the mandatory two-stop rule for this Grand Prix actually made it worse because even though, yes, we had teams on different strategies, half of the field was deliberately going slow to help their teammates, and yeah, it was just a complete horror show. It just needs to be accepted that you can't overtake at Monaco, especially with these cars. It is impossible. These cars have way too much downforce on them. They're way too big, way too wide. Overtaking at Monaco is not possible, and that's why, of course, I did not do a race watch along, because a race watch along for a Monaco Grand Prix would be literally hell on earth for me, or I don't know how anyone else was able to do it, because it is, at this point, the Monaco Grand Prix feels like, watching it feels like a work shift on a Friday where you're desperate for the weekend, you're desperate for it to be over, your work for that week, and you're just constantly looking at the clock, wishing it'll be 5 p.m. That's what watching a Monaco Grand Prix is like. You're just desperately waiting for that lap 78 to come around, because then it will be over very, very quickly. But a horrible race. Thankfully, I didn't have to cover it live because I would have just been ranting for 2 hours straight. And thankfully, we could just review the events of the Grand Prix in this in this podcast. To be honest, we're going to be talking more so about qualifying because the teams didn't really try that much in the race itself. But let's go through, the results and the standings and all of that, starting with the race results. And Lando Norris takes his first ever win in Monaco. Definitely, for him and the championship, a big turning point this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc second, Piastri third, Max Verstappen finishing in fourth, Lewis Hamilton in fifth, and those are the only cars on the lead lap. And then you've got Isaac Hadjar sixth. What a result for him. What a weekend. And Racing Bull's having a great weekend as well. As you got Esteban Ocon seventh, of course, for Haas. Shout out to him. What a weekend he had. One of the top performers through the field. And Liam Lawson in eighth, who Isaac Hadjar should thank very much for helping in the race, given that Lawson held back the field for so long. Alex Albon then in ninth, 2 laps down, just ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz in P10, also 2 laps down. Watching the race, I could have swore Williams were lapped about 5 times, but factually, it was only twice. But yeah, it was with those drivers, Lawson, Albon, Sainz, it was farcical what those teams were doing. But as James Vowles said on the Sky F1 broadcast when the commentators interviewed him during the race, he said it's not like it's not how they want to go racing, but the rules demand it if they want to end up in the points, and that's what Williams had to do to finish where they did. So yeah, just a shame, but those are the results from the Grand Prix. Let's get into, more interestingly, how that affects the championship standing. So Oscar Piastri still in the lead, but only 3 points clear of Lando Norris. Max Verstappen in third. I think we'll be satisfied with the weekend he had. He did the best he could in that Red Bull. The Red Bull was pretty slow this weekend. And Max is only 25 points off the lead of the championship. So, that's not a bad place to be after 8 races. George Russell fourth, obviously out of the championship fight at this point. Leclerc a bit closer to Russell in fifth. Hamilton in sixth. Antonelli seventh. Albon only 6 points behind Antonelli in eighth. Ocon, a few more points for him. He's still ninth. And now Isaac Hadjar enters the top 10 of the championship, and it's fully deserved for the brilliant season he is having. And then on the constructors' side, we have got McLaren, who, as I've said before, they're going to win the Constructors' Championship. And yeah, they are already over 300 points for their total for this season, which is just incredible. Mercedes, of course, had a disastrous weekend, didn't score a point, and are only now 4 points clear of Red Bull, who are third, and Ferrari just 1 point behind Red Bull, so very close in the fight for second in the constructors. Williams in fifth, still very far clear of the rest of the midfield pack. Haas still sixth, with some very important points scored by Ocon. They're on 26 points now. Racing Bulls overtake Aston Martin. Given how quick Racing Bulls are, though, wouldn't be surprised if they overtake Haas in the championship, whether it's this weekend at the Spanish Grand Prix or in Canada, because Racing Bulls consistently are quicker than Haas. But yeah, brilliant to see Racing Bulls doing well. Aston Martin 8th, of course, a shame that they had a car drop out from the points. Alonso was heading for I wouldn't say a very good finish, but a good enough finish, I think, for Aston Martin in the race. Probably was going to be 7th place. And then his engine conked out. Fernando has no luck. And then Alpine 9th and Sauber last of all. And of course, we'll quickly finish up before we go on to the teams with the race pace data. Don't really take anything from this race pace data, though, because it wasn't really a real race, was it? No one was really showing their actual pace. People only showed their actual pace when they actually had to, which was only probably for a few laps during the 78 laps itself. McLaren, though, factually were slightly quicker than Ferrari. Red Bull, couple tenths of a second per lap slower, and then a massive gap to Haas and Racing Bulls, 1.8 seconds a lap off the pace. Aston Martin, 1.9 seconds off. And then Williams, 2.1. Mercedes, 2.3. Mercedes actually came out after the race. I don't know if Toto's joking. I hope he is. I really hope he is. But he said that Mercedes forgot until lap 60 that they had to pit twice. Sums up their weekend. Sauber, 2.4 seconds off, and then Alpine, the absolute slowest. Wasn't helped Alpine's pace, though, by Gasly retiring early on after colliding with the rear end of Yuki Tsunoda. But yeah, this review of the Monaco Grand Prix is not going to be as long as others because, again, only really we can talk about qualifying. We'll start with the race winners, though, McLaren, and you've got to give credit where credit is due, despite the criticism we have given him this season so far. Lando Norris delivered on a big weekend for the championship, and without a doubt this is a turning point. He's only 3 points behind his teammate who's in the lead, and coming into this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix, where McLaren may not be the quickest by far. I think Red Bull with Max Verstappen will be right there with them. But given how quick McLaren are in general, Lando Norris should be right on it this weekend. And surely the confidence will be sky high after winning in Monaco, especially the way he did, delivering a super pole position lap and then controlling the race very nicely from his point of view. For Oscar Piastri, he just didn't do good enough in qualifying. He should have been at least second. He didn't quite hook up the best sectors on his final lap, and that's why he ended up third. Not the end of the world, though, for Piastri. Definitely not a good race or a good weekend, but, again, not the end of the world. He's still, finished on the podium, and if, Piastri can turn this form around and win this weekend, things will all be good again, I think, from his point of view. But, regarding this weekend, if you look at the last couple Spanish Grand Prix, Lando has been not only quicker than Oscar, but miles quicker than Oscar at the Circuit de Catalunya track. And if that keeps up, then Lando might be on one yet again and might be very hard to stop in Spain. Oscar, though, is definitely better than last year, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think this is a big turning point. If Lando, especially if Lando can win this weekend in Spain, I think this might be where Lando starts to not take control of the championship, but this might be where, if Lando is going to win the championship, this might be the point where it turns in his favour. We'll see, though. It's all down to him. The car's quick enough. We know, especially in qualifying, as he showed in Monaco, when he is absolutely on it, he has got tons of pace. It's just about him delivering it. When he does, it's all good. So, yeah, we'll see how that plays out for the Spanish Grand Prix. But McLaren, I think, were the faster team over the weekend compared to, say, Ferrari. Even though Ferrari were close in the fight for pole, I think McLaren were just a slight bit quicker. And, Lando, again, when pole position was clearly there to be taken for McLaren, Lando delivered, Oscar did not. So, yeah, Lando, brilliant job by him. I think, again, in regards to this weekend, I think Lando really does have to win the Spanish Grand Prix this weekend because he really needs to take advantage now of the confidence that he'll now be riding coming into this Grand Prix. For Piastri, though, I think as long as Oscar is in the top 2, I think that is good enough because at least then he'll beat either Verstappen or Norris in the Grand Prix. So I don't think Piastri has to win necessarily as much as Lando does this weekend. But yeah, we'll see how McLaren do. Again, I'm expecting it to be a close battle between McLaren and the Red Bull and Max Verstappen this weekend. Not sure too much about how Ferrari will do. Do remember, though, the technical directive regarding flexi wings comes into effect this weekend. So the pecking order that I'm expecting might not be the case this weekend if that technical directive really does hurt certain teams. Maybe like McLaren, maybe like Red Bull, we'll see. But we'll move on quickly to Ferrari. And in regards to Leclerc, you can't complain about the weekend he's had. Leclerc did the absolute best job he could. The car just wasn't quick enough to get pole. In the race, we saw towards the end he was getting as close as he could to Norris, but again, can't overtake at Monaco. And yeah, Leclerc finished in second. I know he's disappointed. I get that, but at the end of the day, he did the best he could. Lando in that car delivered at the end of the day the pace that was clearly there in the McLaren. And again, McLaren were just that slight bit too quick for Ferrari. It was, though, an encouraging weekend for the Scuderia because this is the first weekend of the season where they've actually competed for pole position and victory. Can they keep this up going forward? If they can, and Leclerc can keep up consistent form, then maybe he can start slowly gaining back points on the championship leader. But personally, I don't think that's going to be the case. This weekend, again, I think it's going to be the race win, a battle between the two McLarens and Max Verstappen. Personally, though, if in my view, if Ferrari can finish on the podium, I think that would be a good enough result and would represent, compared to their season so far, a step forward compared to where they've been. Expecting a race win this weekend, I think, is a bit unrealistic from their point of view, but we'll see. Maybe they have figured out a new solution with this car. They are bringing an upgrade this weekend. I'm pretty sure is it a front or rear suspension that they've been talking about for a few weeks. And again, this technical directive coming in may suit them. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be massively wrong. I mean, I was massively wrong about them in Monaco. I thought in Monaco they'd be very slow. A lot of people did. They ended up only a tenth away from pole. So we'll see. But personally, I don't think they'll be quite on the pace of Max and the McLarens. I think they'll be probably quicker than Mercedes, but yeah, I think a podium would be really a great result for them this weekend. Lewis Hamilton, of course, didn't have a good race. One thing that needs to be sorted out, though, regarding Hamilton, not with Lewis, but his engineer, is the communication, because clearly, communication-wise, there are issues between his engineer, Ricky, and Hamilton himself. Cost him a few places on the grid after Lewis, blocked Max in qualifying, all because of his engineer not giving him the proper information. And then in the race as well, I don't think the communication was great. So something needs to improve on that end. And yeah, we'll quickly go on to Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Again, I thought Max did the absolute best he could this weekend. If you look at qualifying, Red Bull were closer to the midfield, even with Max in the car, than they were to pole position. And he did really well to get himself up into, what was it, 5th in qualifying and ended up being 4th on the grid because of Lewis Hamilton's penalty. So, full credit to Verstappen, did the best he could, but the car was nowhere near as good as the Ferrari and the McLaren. So, he got the best result he could. Actually, a better result he got yesterday than he got in Monaco last year. So, that is something for Max. And in regards to his championship, he simply has to win the Grand Prix this weekend. If he does, then even if Piastri finishes second, the gap will go down to 18 points between Max and Oscar, which is a pretty good position for Max to be in, given that realistically, you'd imagine the Red Bull will still get better over the course of the season. So, yeah, Max, again, has to win this Grand Prix this weekend, and I am going to very much enjoy seeing whether he can, because we know when Max has to win, that's when you get the best version and the most exciting version of Max Verstappen. Yuki Tsunoda finishing in, 13th or something? Yeah, he obviously got knocked out in Q2. Honestly, I don't think Tsunoda could have done any better this weekend because, as I said, that Red Bull was more of a midfield car in qualifying, as Max showed, because again, he was closer to the midfield than he was to the front. And I think Tsunoda getting eliminated in, 12th place in Q2, I don't think really could have done any better than that, given that we know Tsunoda is not on Max Verstappen's level. So I can't complain about how Tsunoda did. Tsunoda will do better this weekend in Spain purely because the Red Bull car will be stronger. But also we need to factor in with Tsunoda that he still is not running the same specification of Red Bull that Max is. So let's give Yuki a break, I think, on that. Mercedes quickly, obviously complete disaster in qualifying. George Russell having a power unit issue and Antonelli crashing at the Nouvelle Chicane. And then in the race, they just tried to hope for a late safety car and nothing happened. And yeah, that was the race for them. One thing I will say, coming away from this weekend, is Antonelli does need to step up because these last couple weekends have been poor from him. Imola, bad qualifying and obviously retired from the race, but I thought his race pace wasn't very good anyway. And then in Monaco, considering his teammate had an issue, if Antonelli had, not had an accident, he probably could have out-qualified Verstappen, maybe Hamilton as well, and ended up 4th on the grid, and then turned that into a 4th place in the race, which would have been a pretty good result from him. It was definitely a realistic one, but then he did what he did. So, yeah, Antonelli, really hope this weekend he steps it up. And I think if Mercedes especially are as strong at the Grand Prix this weekend as they were a year ago, where they were on the podium, then Antonelli has got to be either on the podium or close to it, because he can't afford to be miles away or crashing. He needs to get it together. I know he's only 18, but there is a lot of talent that he has that I don't think he's quite shown us in these last couple races. Those are the front 4 teams. Quick shout out again to Isaac Hadjar, someone I really am loving this season. He's been so good in 2025, and I'm so happy to see that he's now in the top 10 of the championship. Thoroughly deserves it, and I hope he keeps this form up because he has been so good. So good this season in that Racing Bulls car. As well, good to see Lawson finally deliver. Needs to keep that up now if he wants to save his Formula 1 career. Also, again, massive shout out to Ocon, who clearly is a specialist in Monaco. Obviously had an amazing podium a couple years ago, the Alpine, which was one of the drives of that season. And yeah, what a performance from him in Monaco. And Haas, I know, Oliver Behrman has scored some points and he's been unlucky these last couple of races, but Ocon really has shone quite a few times this season for the Haas team, and they're very lucky to have him, I have to say, because he is still easily one of the best midfield level drivers. So yeah, that was your Monaco Grand Prix. Very pleased it's over. Again, qualifying is the only thing really to watch in Monaco, and we watched it and basically saw what happened for the weekend in that session. And now we head to the Spanish Grand Prix, where we are at least guaranteed a few overtakes. Not necessarily a great race, but at least a few overtakes. So yeah, looking forward to the Spanish Grand Prix this weekend. Just to let you know, I will be live on Saturday at 1:30 PM UK time, 90 minutes before qualifying, for the qualifying watch along, so make sure to join for that. I will not, though, be doing a race watch along on the Sunday, so you'll have to join me the day after on the Monday for a review of the Spanish Grand Prix. But then, from the Canadian Grand Prix on until the end of the beginning of the summer break, let's say, I should be doing a quali and race watch along for every Grand Prix from Canada on, again, until the summer break, which I think is, Canada, Austria, Silverstone, Spa, and then the final one is Hungary. So, yeah, that should be the plan going forward from them. Thankfully, I finish uni middle of next week, so that's why I'm going to be doing that, because I'll actually have time to do those things. So yeah, that's the plan going forward, and of course there'll be some recorded videos coming away in the month of June as well, once we are fully done with this triple header. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so you're notified as to when that content comes out. But yeah, make sure to join me this Saturday for the qualifying watch along for the Spanish Grand Prix. And until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.